Okay, we're ready.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the August Design Review Commission. Our first item will be to establish a quorum, so please call roll.
Mr. Gibson?
Here.
Mr. Schmidt?
Here.
Ms. Sherman?
Here.
Mr. White?
Here.
Alderman Owens?
Here.
Chairman Bruns?
Here. Thank you. We do have a quorum. And we'll move on to the approval of the minutes from the July 23rd meeting. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the minutes from July 23rd. Second.
Very good. Please call roll.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Ms. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
Abstain, I was not present.
Mr. Gibson?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Chairman Bruns?
Yes. Minutes approved. And that will bring us to item number 4, the consent agenda, in which we have 2 items. 4A, the Forest Hill Elementary School, is the approval of the revised landscape plan. And item 4B, State Farm, approval of site modifications. Is there anyone on the commission or in the audience that'd like to have either of these items removed from the consent agenda? Seeing and hearing none, I'd like to remind the commissioners that by voting on the consent agenda, you're agreeing to each of the cases that have been listed tonight. And you have read and reviewed each of these with applications with staff, and the applicant had determined no further discussion is necessary. Do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
Move to approve.
Second.
Very good. Please call roll.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Mr. Gibson?
Yes.
Ms. Sherman?
Yes.
Chairman Bruns?
Yes. The consent agenda has passed, so if you were fortunate enough to be in those 2 items, please enjoy your evening. And that will bring us to the next item, which is 5A, Oldfield Green, approval of a tree plan, tree mitigation. Staff presentation, please.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. The item before you is for a tree plan and tree mitigation for the Oldfield Green subdivision. The proposed subdivision is located off of Forest Hill Irene Road, just north of Winchester Road, across the street from Harvest Church. It is a 20-acre site and has already received approval from the Planning Commission, subdivision plat approval for 33 lots, approximately 15,000 square foot lots. There you can see the statistics of the subdivision. There will also be about 1.42 acres of common open space. This is the approved subdivision plat for this project. As you can see here from this aerial photo, this is the subject property. It is currently a heavily wooded site. Nearby you have some developed areas, the St. James Place subdivision, and then also here the Vining subdivision. This is the tree plan that was reviewed by the Planning Commission. The dashed line you see here, those are the demarcation lines for the trees which will be removed. All the trees in this area will be removed in order to put in the infrastructure in these inner lots. These areas here will remain. The developer is not intending to remove the trees in those areas at this time. That will be left up to the decision of the individual home builders. This is the conceptual grading plan as was reviewed by the Planning Commission. At the time of the Planning Commission, there was a condition of approval that was placed on this project that each individual lot would receive a grading plan and tree removal plan through the stormwater engineer. It is requested that that condition be altered now, that there'll be a conceptual grading plan approved at the time of construction. This does not necessarily mean that the developer has to go through and grade the entire site. We're not advocating for mass grading, however, that the concept of grading be included with the construction plans, and that also this tree plan that we're discussing tonight, and if this is approved, then the tree plan will be also become part of that approval set with the construction plan review. So, looking again at the tree removal, the white are the trees which will be removed from the site now by the developer to put in the infrastructure. The gray is what's being left for the individual home builders to decide. As we discussed at subcommittee, this is the amount of trees that are on the site, currently 15,040 inches. The trees that are going to be removed in this white area that you see here are 7,782 inches, 420 trees. The remaining trees then, as we've discussed, will be left to the individual home builders to decide whether they need to come out. At the subcommittee, we discussed what type of tree mitigation would be appropriate for this subdivision. Recently in April, an amendment to the city's tree ordinance was passed. Previously, the way the ordinance read, if trees were to be removed, they were to be replaced on site at a 1-to-1 ratio in terms of caliper inches, or if they could not be accommodated on site, then the trees needed to be planted on public land at a 1-to-1 ratio. If that could not be achieved, then they would come before the Design Review Commission to request a waiver. With the amendment that went before the Board of Mayor and Aldermen was passed in April, there's a third option that if option 1, planting on site, and option 2, planting on public land are not feasible, then third, a payment in lieu of shall be calculated. This is the first project that we have had since the amendment. As we mentioned, their actual subdivision plat was approved by the Planning Commission in October, and then in April, the tree ordinance amendment was passed. So they are somewhat in the middle of two approval processes, you could say. So at subcommittee, we discussed what would be an appropriate mitigation. And as you can see at this table, the proposed calculation for the tree mitigation is to look at a typical property. If this was a farm field with absolutely no trees, what would be a reasonable amount of canopy coverage for a property like this? And it was determined that 5 3-inch trees per lot would create a reasonable amount of density units of tree canopy. Per the city's ordinance, 2 trees are required to be planted on each single-family lot. Thus, that would then leave 3 trees remaining per lot. 3 trees times 33 lots. This then is the amount that would be required to be mitigated for this specific project. In discussing with the Public Works superintendent and with the Parks director what is an average price for a 3-inch tree such as an oak, that would include the purchase of the tree and the labor to put in the tree. $250 was the figure as determined. There you can see 33 lots in Oldfield Green times 3 trees required per lot. If this had been a farm land, no trees on site, per $250, that then equals the payment in lieu of that is proposed for this development. It was determined at subcommittee that requesting them to pay the complete amount to mitigate it was not realistic in this case. So moving forward, if this is approved, the applicant may then submit to the engineering division for construction plans, and then after the construction plans are approved, the plat may be recorded and the lots may be developed. That concludes staff's presentation, and the applicant is also here for any questions.
Thank you. It would normally be time for the applicant to present, but I think we're all very familiar with the project. You're free to say something if you'd like, but you certainly don't have to.
The only thing I might say is just clarity on item number 2.
I just need you to step up here. We gotta, as soon as you want to say something, we got to go official.
Corey Brady, Integrated Land Solutions, Collierville, Tennessee, 9967 Bentwood Creek Cove, excuse me. The only thing I'd like to address or have some minor discussion on is staff comment number 2 with regard to the overall conceptual grading and tree removal plan. We have a overall grading and tree removal plan with minimum FFEs provided on the plan, so that should give a pretty good understanding of what we're looking at from a grading perspective. So I just ask that item number 2 be removed.
The goal, as I see it, and I'm not an engineer, but we do have an engineer with us, and the conceptual grading plan is so that as the entire site, everyone knows where the water is intended to go
Yes.
on, and then the lots can abide by that conceptual idea when they come in for their permits for building and tree removal or
Understood.
land manipulation. So I think staff and the commission and planning and city engineer would feel more comfortable if we had a better idea of where the water was intending to go in the neighborhood in general during a rain event.
Okay. Again, the grading and drainage plan that we provided conveys that information on it. It was included. But if there's an additional conceptual plan that we need to provide in addition to this, I suppose we could, but I'm not really certain what it's going to convey our idea of what could possibly happen with a home. But
I think, Sarah, would you like to speak to that, just for clarification?
Sure. Condition number 2 was put on by the city engineer, and just for some clarity, the city is not advocating a mass grading at this point, and we can discuss with the city engineer if what they've already presented at Planning Commission, if that has sufficient information, or if that plan needs to be revised with some additional information. There's not the necessity for an additional separate plan at this time. It's just taking what's already been approved at Planning Commission and looking if it has sufficient information on it.
Okay. Is that,
yeah, I think if we're purely doing a conceptual grading plan, I just want to make sure that we're not providing a supplemental grading plan, because I don't want a GC to see that. Next thing you know, we have dirt pans on the site, panning the whole site, because that's not at all what we want.
nor is it
Right,
anyone's
okay.
intention here tonight.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, wonderful. Anything further? Well, are you okay?
I am,
Corey?
thank you.
Okay, great, wonderful. And then it would be time for me to open up the public hearing for any of those in favor first or in opposition, but we're all here alone tonight. So then I will close the public hearing and then entertain a motion.
Microphone on.
Sorry. I would like to make a motion to approve the approval of the tree plan and tree mitigation plan for Oldfield Green, location at 3620 and 3634 Forest Hill, Irene.
And also to include the payment in lieu of tree
Correct.
mitigation sum.
And to include the payment in lieu tree mitigation fee of $24,750, and to further discussion of the existing grading and drainage plan with the city engineering. Second.
Second.
Very good, thank you. Is there any further discussion among the commissioners at this time?
Mr. Chairman, do we have an opportunity to ask Mr. Brady any questions at this point?
Believe is back, let me ask council.
Wait, open back
This,
up.
this is commissioner time, correct?
Okay, thank you.
If everybody agrees that we need some more discussion, and everybody agrees to waive the rule, there's no reason you can't do that.
Okay.
No need to waive a rule. I'm fine, thank you.
We're all a little bit new to the new procedure, so in this conversation then, when the applicant is before us presenting, that is the time to ask his questions of the applicant.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I will call for a vote if everyone ready?
Okay.
Very good.
Mr. Schmidt,
Yes.
Ms. Sherman,
Yes.
Mr. Gibson,
Yes.
Alderman Owens,
Yes.
Mr. White,
I'm going to vote no, and I'm going to explain why I'm voting no, and I said this in subcommittee. It seemed apparent to me that this was approved in October in some fashion, and given that the applicant experienced a new process in the mitigation of the trees, did it seem fair to me to apply this process to a new applicant after they had received approval from the DRC in October when this was passed in April. I do understand that the need for mitigation, and I do understand the work on our staff, and I appreciate that and the work of my colleagues, but it didn't seem to me to be something that started, it seemed to me to be something that started in the middle of a process and we applied that to something that already been approved. So that's why I'm voting no. Thank you.
Chairman Bruns.
I am a yes, and I would like to thank Corey and all that applied for working with us for the last couple of months to have this go through. It was a laborious process, but we made it. You do have your approval as of now, so thank you and congratulations.
Well, thank you all, and thank Sarah. She's put a lot of hard work into this as well, so we appreciate it.
Thank you. Is there any new business or old business before us? Hearing none, we are adjourned.